began on a crisp February morning in 1478 in the bustling heart of London. A boy named Thomas More came into the world, the eldest son of John More, a sharp-witted lawyer who would one day rise to become a judge on the king's bench. From his earliest days, young Thomas showed a mind like quicksilver, curious, quick, and endlessly hungry for knowledge. His father, seeing the spark in him, sent him first to St. Anthony's School, one of the finest in the city, where the air hummed with Latin declensions and the chatter of eager students. At just 13, Thomas caught the eye of John Morton, the powerful Archbishop of Canterbury and Lord Chancellor. Morton took the bright lad into his household as a page, where the boy moved among nobles, scholars, and statesmen. One day, Morton leaned over to a colleague and whispered, "This child here, waiting at table, whosoever shall live to see it, will prove a marvelous man." Those words would echo through history. Morton arranged for Thomas to study at Oxford, where for 2 years he immersed himself in Latin, logic, and the great classics. But his practical father soon pulled him back to London to study the common law at Lincoln's Inn. Thomas threw himself into it, yet his soul yearned for something deeper. For nearly 4 years, he lived near the Charterhouse Monastery, joining the Carthusian monks in their austere prayers, fasting, and contemplation. He wore a hair shirt beneath his clothes and rose before dawn to pray. Many thought he would take holy orders, but Thomas chose another path. He would serve God as a layman, in the world, but not of it. In 1505, he married Jane Colt, a gentle young woman from Essex. They had 4 children, Margaret, Elizabeth, Cecily, and little John, filling their home with laughter and learning. Jane sadly died in 1511, and within weeks, Thomas married Alice Middleton, a capable widow who became a loving stepmother and managed their growing household with brisk efficiency. Their home became a beacon of humanist thought. The great scholar Erasmus was a frequent guest, even writing his famous In Praise of Folly while staying with them. Thomas's reputation as a fair and brilliant lawyer spread. He served as Under-Sheriff of London, where he was known as the champion of the poor, judging cases with wisdom and mercy. In 1515, he traveled to the Low Countries on a trade mission for the king. During quiet moments between negotiations, an idea took root in his mind, an imagined island society free from the greed and corruption he saw around him. He called it Utopia, meaning no place. When it was published in 1516, it caused a sensation across Europe. In vivid detail, Thomas described a perfect commonwealth where property was held in common, education was universal, religious tolerance flourished, and reason guided all. It was a mirror held up to the flawed world of kings and princes, witty, profound, and laced with his trademark irony. King Henry VIII himself took notice of this remarkable man. By 1518, Thomas entered the royal service, becoming a trusted counselor, diplomat, and eventually Lord Chancellor in 1529, the highest legal office in the land. He and the king shared a warm friendship at first. Henry, still young and vigorous, would summon Thomas for late-night talks on theology and statecraft, sometimes strolling arm in arm through the gardens at court. Thomas served loyally, helping craft policy, negotiating treaties, and even writing against the rising tide of Protestant ideas from Martin Luther, whom he saw as a threat to the unity of Christendom. But storm clouds were gathering. Henry's marriage to Catherine of Aragon had produced no surviving son, and the king became obsessed with securing a male heir. He sought an annulment from the Pope, arguing the marriage was invalid. When the Pope refused, Henry broke with Rome. In 1534, Parliament passed the Act of Supremacy, declaring Henry the supreme head of the Church of England. Every subject was required to swear an oath acknowledging this. Thomas could not. In his heart, he believed the Pope was the true head of the Church, a matter of divine law that no king or parliament could change. He resigned as chancellor quietly in 1532, citing poor health, and withdrew to his beloved home in Chelsea. There, surrounded by his family, books, and garden, he lived simply, praying, writing, and watching the world unravel. The king would not let him go so easily. In April 1534, Thomas was summoned to swear the oath. He refused. On the 17th of that month, he was arrested and taken to the Tower of London. They placed him in a cold, damp cell at the base of the bell tower, where the stones seemed to weep with moisture. He paid for his own keep, 10 shillings a month, and kept a faithful servant. His beloved daughter Margaret was allowed to visit, smuggling in small comforts, wine, books, paper. In those dim months, Thomas wrote one of his most moving works, a dialogue of comfort against tribulation, a testament of faith amid suffering. He told Margaret that losing his head would be a riddle, a case in which a man may lose his head and have no harm. Pressure mounted. Interrogators came, including Thomas Cromwell and the slippery lawyer Richard Rich. Thomas remained courteous but unyielding. He would say nothing against the king, but neither would he affirm the supremacy. "I do nobody harm. I say none harm. I think none harm," he wrote, "but wish everybody good." They stripped away his books, his writing materials, even his warm clothes as winter bit deeper. On July 1st, 1535, he stood trial in Westminster Hall. The charge was treason, based largely on Richard Rich's testimony that Thomas had denied Parliament's power to make the king head of the church. Thomas defended himself with quiet dignity, calling Rich a man not of any commendable fame. The verdict was never in doubt: guilty. As the sentence of death was read, hanging, drawing, and quartering, Thomas finally spoke his mind. No more could this oath be lawfully taken by any Christian man, he declared, than could the Pope's supremacy be lawfully taken away. He warned that this act would tear at the fabric of Christendom itself. 5 days later, on July 6th, the sentence was commuted to a simple beheading. Early that morning, Thomas emerged from his cell, dressed in a plain gray gown, carrying a small red wooden cross. The short walk to Tower Hill was lined with a silent crowd. His daughter Margaret pushed through the guards one last time to embrace him. "This is God's will," he comforted her gently. On the scaffold, he remained composed. He forgave his executioner, made a brief prayer, and then, with a touch of his old humor, said to the headsman, "See me safe up, for my coming down, I can shift for myself." He laid his head on the block, uttered one final prayer, and the axe fell with a single, clean stroke. His head was placed on a spike on London Bridge, a grim warning to others. But Margaret, with quiet courage, later arranged for it to be taken down and preserved. Thomas More's body was buried in the Tower, in the chapel of St. Peter at Vincula. In the years that followed, his story burned brighter than any king's decree. A man who had held the highest offices, written one of the most influential books of the age, and stood as friend to princes, chose conscience over comfort, truth over power. In 1935, 4 centuries later, the Catholic Church canonized him as St. Thomas More, patron of statesmen, lawyers, and those who seek justice. His legacy endures not just in marble statues or feast days on June 22nd, but in the quiet courage of anyone who refuses to bend when principle demands they stand firm. In an age of shifting allegiances and royal whims, Thomas More showed that a man's soul belongs to God first, and no earthly power can claim it. And so his story lives on, vivid, defiant, and full of grace.